It's Monday, June 6th, and today we'll be talking about free mint meta. It was crazy over the weekend. Is it good for the space? Is it going to stay for a while? We'll talk about everything else that's coming up in NFTs this week. Tyler, welcome. So today we are going to be talking about just general NFT stuff and a lot of things that sort of popped off this past weekend, died right away. A lot of things that are minting for free or small supplies, small mint price, things that are trying to mint out at even 0.02 are having a tough time selling out. But if you switch it from 0.02 down to 0, then all of a sudden it sells out. So what sort of things this past weekend sort of stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me this past weekend is I am swearing off chasing free mints. I'm terrible at it. I tried chasing a few here this weekend. I got in on Binkies. Okay, I minted Binkies. That one's still up a bit from mint. I got wrecked chasing the Tower of the Occult, which was like the third or the fourth, version of that meta. So I just decided yesterday I'm done chasing these. I'm just going to sit on the sidelines, and if I miss some upside on some of these, so be it. But I'm clearly out of touch with these trading groups and the botters who are basically doing this professionally right now, and they're kind of controlling everything.
Yeah, it's the type of thing where it's almost like it started becoming mainstream, and once it becomes mainstream, then the botters come in because they see this is where a lot of the profit is to be had, and they find ways to optimize it. Gas starts going up because something like Binkies, they have, we're going to have a free mint at this exact time. Everyone knows it's going to happen. I feel like the stuff that had better ROI is generally surprise mints, like when they happen, whether or not you've heard of it. Like the occult one, I think was expected to happen that day, but it kind of was like, all right, it's happening now. So
Right.
those are the ones that seem to be working out, but it's all in the short term. Like the only one that really has had any sort of long stay has been the goblins. So we'll talk about the goblins, of course, again today because they had some wild weekend of rumors as well. But to me, a lot of this free mint stuff, like there's now botters. For those that might not know, the way that they're sort of going around it is they'll have, say, like 50 wallets, and they run a script that all of the wallets will mint from that contract and then send it all to one wallet that sells these NFTs after. And yeah, if you're getting in at 0.01 ETH or less, you're very quick to dump a floor on something like the occult that they got up to like 0.2 floor right away. And people that have 50 of them are like, oh, this is great. I'm just going to start dumping them at 0.15. And then all of a sudden it crashes the floor. So that's been hurting a lot of these projects as well. But
And I think
there's not really anything else leading the board. Go ahead.
Related to free mints, I think you've kind of nailed it. You've been trading these fairly well from what I've been kind of tailing your wallet and watching. And we were chatting offline, and you said your strategy is basically either get in on mint or pass and just sit it out. And that makes a ton of sense because, if you get in on the mint, you can't really lose too much, right? Except unless you got in on a gas war, similar to like Binkies, which is like the highest gas we've seen on these. But for these stealth ones, if you get in on the actual mint, your downside is pretty capped. So I get it. But yeah, like chasing mints like the occult, which I personally did yesterday. I think I bought at 0.2, and then I checked an hour later and it was 0.03. Almost threw up all over the place, and then swore off free mints for the rest of this short future. But I think that's a good strategy. So for anyone who does want to continue kind of chasing these and likes the ROI, I think stick with that. Try to get it on mint. If you can't, stay disciplined. Wait for the next one.
Yeah, and I forget the word off the top of my head, but it's a sort of it's not really recency bias. It's a different term for this, but I think what happens is people saw the WAG die go up over 1 ETH. So they're like, oh, a cult is going to follow this same path. So I can go in at 0.2 because it's going to 1 ETH. There was another project yesterday that was called 1 ETH floor programmed. I don't know if you saw that one,
I
but
didn't.
then people are going off this narrative. Oh, it's called that. It's guaranteed to. And it's people are creating their own sort of narrative biases around this, and that's where people can really get hurt with it. Um, Generally, I mean, I'm trying to think. The WAG die, I was able to get one around like 0.17, and I think I sold it at around 0.4. So that one I wrote up a little bit, but the reasoning for that one was I saw a lot of people were switching their Twitter avatars to it. And I think that's where it can create a little more long term sort of stay with it. So that's sort of my thought with that one. But most of these are just now dying on impact. And if you are filling up 10 wallets to do this and you're minting from 10 wallets, then it does start to add up. And if you're minting them, as a lot of them are now like one per wallet, I think that's actually worse for the, if you want to call us like the normies of it, versus compared to the botters. Because for someone like me to go in and make 10 wallets, then you have to fund 10 wallets and you are paying gas on 10 wallets. It's worse than last week when I was buying 10 from the same wallet for just one gas fee. So um, it's become less heavily ROI than it was before. But let's look at some of the board here on the project rankings page on Lucky Trader. It's still Goblintown leading. They're still sort of the face of NFTs in this bear market cycle. We still have Bored Ape Yacht Club up there, but most of the stuff here is relatively new.
Yep.
What's sort of your take on this project rankings page?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. So my weekly preview, I kind of broke down the board. First, the headlines, Goblins, can't take it away from them. They are leading all the headlines. 17,000 ETH traded. I think that's just on OpenSea on the week, and their floors 6 ETH, and then still up 130%
Hmm.
on the week. So that is even with their airdrop that came through. And I think we can go into a little more detail in a bit. I think the other takeaway, you nailed it. 7 of the top 10 in the leading volume right now are products that didn't exist 3 weeks ago. So it's that part of the market where everyone's kind of chasing the shiny new objects. They're momentum trading those. Those are getting all the attention, while the blue chips are kind of just sitting on the shelf, definitely on the back burner. Bored Ape Yacht Club is holding strong at 96. I think that's probably the strongest indicator on the board. But I mean, Moonbirds saw like we're seeing 57 sales in the week, 194 Azuki sales on the week. I mean, we're talking about single digits, or low double digit sales per week in these sets. So horrible liquidity, basically just kind of chopping. And I think a lot of people are the hopium for the blue chips is that they're not falling off worse than they already have with
Mm-hmm.
this low of volume, and people aren't just undercutting the floor too egregiously. But man, it's been crickets in the top end sets.
Yeah, and I think it's the type of thing where a lot of people do look at this and feel like it's an indicator of strength on some of those higher end projects. Like, I mean, they're getting less than 100 sales in a week, but they're still above a 10 ETH floor. So people that are holding them feel good enough holding them, at least for now. We had a question in chat from Albanian Eagle about what do you guys think of buying a Moonbird now? I don't know. We're both Moonbird holders, so I think for me personally, and this is somewhat biased as someone that has purchased a Moonbird recently, is I think it has a lot of comfort buying into Moonbird compared to some of these other things, and it still has a lot of upside because it's still relatively new. That that was my reasoning for going to Moonbirds over, say, like a Clone X or Doodles or one of these other ones in that range.
Yeah, I mean, a few thoughts, and of course, like, I hold a few Moonbirds as well, so of course a little biased, but a few bullish points. Before listed on OpenSea right now, that's less than 1%.
Yeah.
So it's the lowest supply out there for any set. So if any buy volume comes, the floor can move rapidly. We had the first airdrop just a week and a half ago. The oddities. It wasn't even an official really Moonbirds family drop. It was kind of a side product, and it immediately hit a 3.4, and it's held up really well over the
Mm-hmm.
last 2 weeks. It was actually like 3.3 over the weekend. I think it's 2.8 right now. I think that maybe the longest term bullish indicator that not many people are talking about is Discord, and Discord security is kind of top of mind off of this latest Yuga and Bored Ape Yacht Club Discord hack. Project High Rise, which is one of the end goals or primary visions with Kevin Rose, True Ventures, and the Proof and Moonbirds project, is going to be a Discord alternative.
Yeah.
So I've been seeing a lot of people talking about, okay, what are the alternatives to Discord out there? Well, they're building one, and it's part of this project. So I think those are a few reasons to be bullish. I think to be bearish, a lot of people will say that they got too expensive too fast without proving enough, and it's kind of hard to
Mm-hmm.
argue that because they ran up so far. So I think
Yeah.
it's the second most expensive PFP, so you're definitely taking on some risk there at the price.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think this whole Discord thing is now like the hot buzzword around the space. So uh, I'll put it on two sides. One that's somewhat bearish of that is like, why do people need an alternative to Discord? People like having everything in one place. There's like people aren't going to not get scammed just because it's on a different version of it, but I do think because this is sort of the talk right now is like, oh, we saw um the co-founder of BAYC talking about how we need an alternative to Discord, which a lot of people didn't really like that tweet from him, but I think just the fact that people are talking about it right now might lead people towards building that narrative that for Moonbirds as well. Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that it's holding up. And the other indicator that you hadn't mentioned is this Ryan Carson fund that if you do the math out, like based off of things he's been tweeting, he has basically said that he's got, I think, multiple thousand ETH that he's
I
planning
think
on
like
putting into.
10,000.
No, but
Oh,
he mentioned some number like 30% going towards proof ecosystem stuff.
oh wow, I
So
missed that.
yeah, he probably changes what he says every other tweet. So like I'm not sure, but people are talking about how he's basically made a statement that at some point in time he's going to sweep Moonbirds in proof collective passes. So I think that's the other thing that people are holding on to right now as well for like Moonbird specifically. But I mean, Doodles have this whole duplicator thing at NFT NYC, like we've talked about before, could be bullish. It could be the end, depending on how it comes out and how people take it. But I just think in general, NFT NYC, a lot of people are trading sideways on the bigger end stuff because they're waiting to see what happens that week. So I don't know. I think that's the tough part there is the next couple of weeks. It's just people waiting for more news, I think. And Eagle is saying about he's wondering if the nesting discourages new buyers because this was something I was going back and forth on. Like, why is someone going to want a straw nest in a month from now? So I think that isn't necessarily a deterrent in my thoughts because like they could just create something down the road that boost. Oh, if you haven't bought a Moonbird yet and you want to buy a straw or something, like there's ways that they could change that, adapt down the road. So I think just the fact that they're so new, they have a little more flexibility on adapting than some of these higher end projects or other higher end projects.
Agree. I think we'll start to see a bigger spread from those who have nested or are fairly current with their nesting versus those who are the furthest behind.
Mhm.
But the reality is, at this next nest, the bronze nest, if we get a 10th airdrop that you only get once you get to the nest, then people will be willing to wait, and
Yeah.
they'll go back to the straw nest and be like, okay, I have to wait 20 extra days, but then I'm going to get this airdrop, so it's going to be worth it. So I think it still hasn't become a deal breaker yet, but it's definitely something worth watching
Mhm.
um, as the spring is bigger.
Yeah. And another thought on this table here. So, what of the new stuff? Do you think any of it has any legs to them outside of the goblins? Even like Boki ran over one ETH. The Tiger Bob is one that's still sitting above one ETH. So, what do you think of the newer stuff on this project rankings page?
I don't think any of it has legs to it. I think Goblins does. So I'm going to put Goblins
Yeah.
aside for now. But I think Boki is a great case study. So I spent most of the last few days trying to kind of chat with people who had bought into Boki or had at least been following it and ask them like why is Boki moving right now? And no one really had any answers. And like the best answer I got was, a few big ape holders bought in that are kind of influencers in that community, and then the ape community kind of followed suit and it pumped, and then it's already down 50% from its high, right? So like literally the only narrative I've been able to capture around Boki moving was that a few
Other
BAYC
people did it.
influencers jumped in. And I think that's a great analogy for what's happening in this market right now. Everyone's just kind of following the leader, chasing the shiny new object, trying to get some momentum trades, and then they're exiting. And all of these new projects will be below 0.5 ETH a month from now. We pulled up the tweet from like the last cycle, like those anime products like Everai, Akuma, all those went to the 1 to 2 ETH range. Like we've absolutely seen these cycle play out for these low caps to have some short term price movement, and then they just fall off the board. I think some great warning signs are three landers and Karafuru. Karafuru was strong at 2. It fell to like 0.6 in the past week, and then three landers I saw are selling in 0.4. Those were well above 3. I want to say at some point. So when you're playing these lower end, if they don't, you have to make a decision in the first few weeks. Does this have potential to make it into the blue chip mid tier to top tier status? And if not, you might as well just try to exit whenever there's liquidity.
Yeah, so let's move that into Goblin Town, because I do think that it's going to be sort of the talk of basically a month where it's the leader, and I think that creates some staying power to it. We're going to talk about MFers a little later, which had a similar run to the Goblins, and MFers are still over 2 ETH floor. So Goblins, what do you make of this? So they have they had a burger claim on, was that Friday night?
Started Friday night, yeah.
So yeah, so they have the burger claim, and that's been holding above a 1 ETH floor. And we saw the Goblins with normal airdrop stuff. They fell back down. I think they bottom around 4. But we're sitting a little above floor, like 4.5 ish for a while. That like next day, and then we had a few weird tweets that popped up. First, people did a goblin inspired art, his one of his everyday that he posts, and he did this one for Goblin Town specifically, and that got a lot of people talking, because in the past we've seen people basically say, I'm not part of this low effort pump and dump, and they've been tagging people every once in a while, and they have obviously a few memes here and there. But then we get this tweet from Gordon Goner, who's one of the founders of BAYC, and he met up with people in real life and says, "This guy with great hair showed up to dinner and started making goblin sounds. What does it mean?" And people freaked out. Like they immediately said, "This guarantees BAYC connection to Goblintown, guarantees people did the art for it." And people are just like going off with all these claims basically for the next, I don't know, 12 hours or so. This happened like at night. And then it sort of ran for goblins went up to like 70th floor up until Garga, another BOIC founder, came out and basically said, no, we have no connection with the goblins. So what are your thoughts with just this whole scenario in general?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So just so everyone's aware of the price action, I think Luke covered it. These after the airdrop, the goblins were back to 4.5. This tweet comes out and they essentially run to like at least 6, if not higher. And then there was chatter in the Discord there. The founders were talking in the Discord. People were asking them, are you tied to this artwork or not? And then they had like these joke deflection
Troll.
answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a troll answer. He's like, no, we only do serious stuff. Like we're working on these 2002 Honda Accord projects.
Yeah.
But and then people thought, me included, like this is, a potential confirmation here because they're not saying no. And that for those, again, I think we talked about this on Thursday, but if not, in the leaked pitch deck, there is a line item for 2022 revenue for something called goblins. So like that's a big part of this whole, rumor, this Yuga tie-in had legs because it was in that pitch deck. It's not just pure speculation. There's actually something of substance to point back to. And then these guys they will not deny it. And then finally they came out and denied it. But well, guess what? That's impacted a lot of the buyers in the market.
I think that's why they decided to come out and say that because they realized how much movement this created.
Yeah, and the floor moved 50% on this guy's tweet. And I mean, it can be viewed as market manipulation. I mean, Nate Chastain got arrested last week.
Yeah.
Right. And, people will defend it and say, well, are they not allowed to make jokes? Well, of course. But I mean, how many Bored Ape owners might have gotten wrecked buying the top on this right before these guys denied it? So wrecked is the wrong word. And of course, everyone's up to do their own due diligence. But people lost a few $1,000 if they bought the top of this on these tweets.
Yeah, I mean, you really hope that no one within the BAYC or people team made a purchase around 4 before this tweet. Like that, going back to the Nate stuff, is like that's where it would really go wrong. I think it's hard to say just off of this tweet because like, oh, they're having fun, they're joking with the people. And it's hard to say whether or not they did it maliciously, that whole thing. But yeah, it definitely moved the market, which was kind of crazy. And my thought on the pitch deck was codas aren't on there. So my thought is codas were originally goblins. And then they were like, well, goblins are already done. Let's do our own thing or something. And they just like renamed them to codas. That's my thought on why it wouldn't be goblins, but it was listed in the deck. But yeah, I mean, they've basically held around 6 after that tweet. They came back down and they've held above 5 since then. So they're sitting around the 6 range. This seems to be where they're balancing out and sort of the fair price for them right now. And I don't know if you have 6 ETH and there's not a lot of other good projects in that price range.
I think my question,
they have the liquidity. Oh yeah.
I guess my question is, so what's next though, right? So like if you're buying at 6 right now, like they've already had an airdrop 2 weeks into the project, and of course it's doing well. But I guess like what the Yuga rumors have now been squashed. So I guess what else is there? What's going to drive the near term upside on this? And I think the risk is this is a meme product. Everyone's rallying around, how important memes are to NFT culture, and I've certainly said that before. But the reality is memes slow down and die out. Toads is a great example. Ran all the way to 15, now back sub 2. MFers ran to 6 or 7, got all the way back to 1. Now they're actually back up. That's one of our talking points for later today. But the point is, these memes only stay hot for so long, right? Until the next one comes around. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, so yes, let's talk with the next one that popped up. The we are all gonna die one popped up, and it's sort of trying to follow that same map. And one thing that I've talked about before on these is just like the diminishing returns, and they're all they're all trying to capture what Goblintown did. And oh, we have no roadmap. Oh, we're free to mint. Oh, we have weird text. Oh, we're gonna have these um, spaces and make weird noises, and it's just people are get over that quickly. So this one ran up to close to 1.5, I think maybe 1.2, 1.3.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, like it's a hard time to buy in at 0.75 for this. um I think the goblins are what's going to stay, and everything else, in my opinion, is you're chasing something that's a secondary thought and is never going to like catch. It's kind of like buying into one of these airdrop companions of a project. Like it's this is what, like 1/6, 1/8 or so of the goblins. Is that like the best another one of these can do? I kind of think of it as like a companion. It's either you want the goblin or none.
Yeah, I think a part of this is, and you hit on it a little bit, is like it's just they're copycats in so many ways. And of course, we are all going to die is a little bit different, right? They changed the font. It's a different,
It's the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
lore, but they definitely follow in the footsteps. And then when you see things like they're getting on spaces and doing similar things to like what the goblins did, well, you're just trying to recreate what the goblins did. And the reason the goblins had so much success is because they were very different and unique,
In the
and
first being it.
they're the first to do that, right? So that spaces is now, or there was 2,000 people on it, and they're all making goblin noises for the first time. That was epic. That made huge waves. But now everyone else who's doing something similar is just copying that, and it's pretty
And they have
easy
like
to
a
see
hundred
through it.
people. They don't have
Yeah.
thousands.
So, yeah, I definitely don't think there's any value in chasing these right now. Certainly, could they pump? Sure, anything can pump, but it feels like the diminishing returns are coming, and they're probably coming soon.
Yeah, we saw it with the poop it NFTs. They went up to like zero point 0.6 or so because they had a claim as well. So like it's almost like if you have a catalyst, yeah, hold it to that maybe. But it's just like even the catalyst, like you see it there, like zero point 0.1 floor. It's not really. I don't know. It's almost like just they're all doing the same thing, and people get bored of it, and are trying to chase something that is a much lower version of it. um there was also like the Bobo stuff that came out. It's just all kind of like the same stuff in a different way, and I think it's going to hurt a bunch of people. So that I think is pulled away from some of the if you want to call them the good projects. Right now, I think that pulled away from Boki of making a rail run. It pulled away from Wrecked Guy, people, just the
Yeah.
liquidity part of it. And it could hurt those longer term. There was also Vivid came out, and when they revealed it, like immediately crashed. Quirklings actually did well. That was one that they were off of the Quirkies project, and they ran up to about zero point 0.4 floor or so. We saw some higher end sales for the Quirklings, but do you think just these others, like we're all gonna die, like coming out with the free mint, it's just like hurting the stuff that actually should be in the forefront?
Yeah, and that's absolutely a part of it. People, this feels a little more zero sum, then I think NFTs in general are positive sum. But this new game feels, PvP,
Yeah.
zero sum, and some people are winning, and it feels like a lot of people are losing. And then also just like these gas fees add up over time, the gas fees and the royalties for everyone chasing these new free mints, which the mints are free, but typically royalties are like 7.5%. So that's slowly adding up, taking money out, as well as all the transfers and gas for mints. So I think that's a part of it, but it's the hot item. It's definitely the meta. Everyone understands that right now, and I feel like the blue chips aren't going to move until a few people decide they want to start moving on the blue chips, and then I
Yeah.
think people
Yeah.
will start to follow, and FOMO will start to
Yeah.
kick in. But it's just a big game of kind of wait, like, and how long can we wait, and how low will some of the floors drop? But I mean, there's certainly they feel like they're getting relatively attractive. If you think some of these blue chips still have legs, um, here for the future.
Yeah.
Some people think they're just all totally dead, but
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, let's talk a little about the volume just in
Sure.
general across, because this is something we're chatting about where the volume has been somewhat better in the past week than in the trailing 2 weeks before that. It's still not like great, but what's your thoughts on just the in general? This is the OpenSea value volume. We'll talk a little about how X2, Y2 has gotten a decent chunk as well. But what's your thoughts on the volume right now? Because it has slightly gone up.
It has. So just looking at this OpenSea chart, you can see it's slight uptick. It's kind of closer to like the 40 million a day range. But I've known kind of in the back of my head, like X2, Y2, and Looks are getting a decent amount of volume on a daily basis. I want to find a dashboard that has all of those. And I finally found a good one this morning. It's probably a little bit X2, Y2 shaded, but jaded. So we'll talk about that. But the story here is for anyone not paying attention to X2, Y2, it's time to start paying attention to them. And this market share graph is probably the one that just paints the quickest picture for that. But basically, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, X2, Y2 is here in the purple. They're getting 30% market share on a
Yeah.
given day. I think we had to take the looks rare percent with a grain of salt because they're taking out the wash trading, and I think people with their own biases, agendas might be taking out more wash trading than is actual wash trading.
Mm,
So looks rare could be higher than this. But one takeaway: X2Y2 is getting meaningful volume on a daily basis, and two, the daily volumes are much higher than I've been thinking they are because I've just been reporting on the OpenSea
yeah.
numbers in my daily updates. But I mean, X2Y2 yesterday set their all-time high at around 30 million. They were
Yeah.
consistently doing 20 to 25 every day for this past week. So we're not doing 40 million a day in NFT volume. It's much closer to 60 to 70 million
Yeah.
per day, which is still low, but it's much closer to that 100 million a day number. That's our bull market indicator than 30 is.
Yeah.
So that's given me some signs of hope. It's certainly it's not fun watching, with the projects that all this liquidity is chasing right now, but it's a good sign that it's there. And again, it just feels like we need the catalysts to rotate back to the large caps, and then those will start to take off.
Yeah. And a couple points on why people are using X2Y2. They extended and they decided for June they're going to have the low fees once again. And I think people were pretty happy about that. It as you're mentioning before, those 7.5% royalties add up. So if you go to X2I2 and you're saving 5% on a sale, like why not list over there? I wonder, and I'm not sure if you can pull this specifically in any way, but I wonder how much of the volume, I would guess a lot of it comes from Gem. I think more people are going on to Gem or Genie and just trying to sweep the whatever's out there as the cheapest. And a lot of times that'll pop up on X2Y2. And so I think people are are using Gem more now, and that's where they're finding the X2I2. I think if someone goes to search something, they are searching on OpenSea more likely. It's also easier to search on OpenSea, but do you think people are going onto X2Y2, or if this is all just coming from Gem?
Well, I think they absolutely are. So I do agree that a lot of the buy side pressure is likely coming from Jim. But for you to be able to have that buy side option, you have to have sell pressure on X2Y2. So that means people are going on to X2Y2 at least to list their NFTs. And I think that it's been a theme that certainly folks who are a little bit sharper traders who are following these fees have been doing this on X2Y2 for some time now. Like early on, like the Moonbirds were either zero, I think they were 0% on X2Y2. Like the Beans were 0% for a while. So it just made more sense to trade over on
Especially the higher
X2Y2.
end stuff. Yeah.
And people would list at a discount, right? Because you're saving the 5% fee, so list at 1% lower. Um, so I think they're starting to make a splash, which of course was their goal. I don't know how long X2Y2 is going to be able to keep this up, because clearly, like, when we're taking away these fees, they're eating that. Because I don't know the exact mechanics, but I don't believe the product teams aren't just saying their royalties. So I think that the platform must be eating those in some capacity. Um, so we'll see how long the gimmick can last. But while it's here, we have to take it into consideration when we're trading, buying, and listing. And if you're not paying attention to X2Y2, you're missing out.
Yeah, I truly do wonder how they can do this for 3 straight months, because even with that amount of volume, it's probably better, 40 million, and it's like half a percent of that. But they're also paying out the coins based on when you're selling, and so it seems like they have to be losing money right now in a way as a platform, and maybe they're taking the L for a few months for the greater good of getting the mass adoption, because people are always looking for something better than OpenSea, or they complain about OpenSea enough that maybe this is the way that it starts up, is people see this. And we saw this with like Solana. People see, oh, there's that much volume over there on Magic Eden, and then they start using it. So sometimes maybe that's just how it has to start. So we'll be watching that this week, and see sort of where it goes on that end, to see if people are actually still using it, or if this was like for maybe specific projects that ended up bumping on X2Y2. What and then we wanted to talk about a little of this ETH Bitcoin macro stuff. So the ETH Bitcoin chart, it's sort of, I don't know, but what's your take on this? Because it's coming down right now. Is that a bullish indicator for Ethereum, or what's sort of your take here?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bearish. So the ETH to Bitcoin ratio is as low as it's been really since last August. So we're at a 10-month low here. It's like 16.7. One Bitcoin's worth like 16.7 ETH right now. And I feel like part of like NFT Twitter, the echo chamber has also got ETH maxis in it. And a lot of people just dunking on Bitcoin, no utility. Well, it sure seems like Bitcoin is holding up the best right now in this overall crypto bear market. And I think it's at a point where if NFTs continue to kind of trend sideways or slowly down, people might opt to get out of ETH entirely and just rotate to Bitcoin. I know that's a thought that's certainly been crossing my mind. A lot of folks are kind of thinking that Bitcoin is going to continue to outperform ETH fairly significantly over the next few months if a crypto bear market does continue. So it's a meaningful data point. It's one absolutely to watch and to pay attention to. Again, we don't have enough history to really understand how these ratios impact the NFT market, whether this is bullish or bearish, but I think it's at least a data point to be following uh, as you approach trading this market.
And I think one narrative that people are talking about right now is like, why do you need Ethereum if it's not for NFTs currently? And with obviously things like the merge that are on the horizon as well that people are going to talk about and be scared to hold through. And it's interesting. It's a lot of these altcoins are mostly dying as well right now, and people have always sort of thought of Bitcoin as that safety net. And if it can't be a safety net during this time, does that mean crypto just dies? So I think that's what people are really talking about right now. And it'll be interesting to watch if people actually go back to Bitcoin, because a lot of people that for the past year have been calling it boomer coin, if they decide to switch over to it, it'll be interesting. Not sure if I'm there yet. Like I'm not a big buyer of Bitcoin in general, but uh, I think I believe in that thesis. It's also the type of thing, if you're a bear, then why not just move it into USD for a little bit, and then decide later is another option that people are talking about. So, yeah, this is definitely something to watch, especially since that dip is really all in this last month too. So, uh, kind of interesting point. Figured we'd chat about just in general. Let's talk a little about some stuff maybe upcoming for this week.
Yeah.
There's not really much, but uh, this art blocks drop just happened. Sold out in like a minute, 2 minutes. There was only 222 of them. It looks like floor is around zero point 0.2 and it minted at 0.11. So, I mean, currently above, I see someone who bought at 0.28 20 minutes ago is already selling at a loss. And it's just like crazy watching people do that sort of thing. But what's your thoughts on this? Because this is an Art Blocks factory drop. And it seems like the factories with these low mint counts have been selling out recently.
Yeah, there's definitely been more action in Art Blocks Factory the last month, and it's been enough to pay attention to. So the Horo drop did really well like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It went to like a 1.7 ETH floor. Last week, Daisies did the 200 supply, 0.1 ETH mint. Then it rocketed out to like zero point 0.6 before falling back to like 0.3. So I think a lot of people started following that, put two and two together. Today's mint 222 supply on the low end, 0.11 ETH to mint. So again, it's sold out in a minute. You basically had to fire on the gun or close to have much shot on this one, and with relatively high gas. So demand for the factory is absolutely back, and it almost seems like the supply matters much more than the Art Blocks tag. You know, whether it's factory, playground, or created, people really just care about those supplies, and we've seen that in recent curated performance. So like the color space drop was the last curated. I'm gonna try to find it. Here it is from Tabor Roback. It was 600. Never really got off the ground. It's sitting at 0.35 ETH on secondary. So I think that's something to take into consideration ahead of Wednesday's new curated drop. So this Wednesday, we're going to see Montreal Fringe Scale from Amon Tobin. It's a white noise style. To me, it kind of seems a little bit like the Synapse project was from a long way back, as well as Casey Rees. I'm blanking on this. He did his first playground drop was kind of similar to this one. So we've seen this style play out before. It's going to be 500 supply, Dutch auction, 3 ETH to 0.2. It's one of those where I think it's probably going to go to the low end, but certainly one to watch. But at least it's been nice to see these minting out, and certainly the factory seems to be the hottest.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting that this is what, I don't know, a year ago it was probably when Art Blocks was at its peak as well, and it's somewhat coming back to it. I think one thing that they've sort of realized is we don't need to drop 1,000 mints every day on these things, and now that they have lowered some of the supply, it's benefited some of the artists. And I don't know. The way I'm looking at it is maybe look for it based on the artist. If you're looking to attack some of these, but it is interesting how many of these have actually popped in comparison to curated as of late. So, not sure what it means long term or anything, but this Divinier if that's how you are supposed to pronounce it. We'll see how that performs over the next few days. I think being 0.11 flat price was a benefit to them as well. So then,
Definitely.
what else do we have on the docket this week? Because I think this MFers one is potentially the biggest story of the week.
Probably.
So basically, Sartoshi has posted this image a couple times, where he's talking about June as being the next era for MFers. I don't think we have specific details of what it might be specifically, but on Thursday, 6/9 at noon Eastern time, there's going to be something, whether it's an airdrop or a claim. They based on this image here, they had the idea was first the OG drop, then they had the crazies, which were an airdrop. It didn't say anything like first airdrop, so I'm not sure. What do you think is going to be coming on Thursday here?
I think it's a roadmap update. So it's going to be Satoshi kind of talking about what's next. As an MFR holder, I don't love the language on this. I'm just noticing it now for the first time that the crazies was called the airdrop. To your
Yeah.
point, not called the first airdrop, and of course that can change.
Yeah,
Um,
no, if I'm, like, reading into that too much, but I when I first looked at it, I thought it said first, and now that I'm looking at it, it's just saying "the." But, I mean, that was on 420, and now they're on 6/9, so, I mean, they're using they're going full meme with this, so, they have come back. They're at around, what, point
yeah,
2 2.7 floor or so, um
2.69. How fitting.
yeah,
It's up over 100%. So they were down at 1.2 near the bottom, which is fairly low, I'd say for them. That's where they're definitely starting to approach kind of buy zone. Um, Now they've rallied to 2.69. All eyes are on Friday, or wait, Thursday is 6/9, right?
Thursday,
Um,
yeah.
so if it's a good announcement, if it's a surprise airdrop, that's going to be a big market mover. Um, if it's not big, it's probably gonna we'll see the floor dip. But this is the biggest project with the biggest announcement going this week. So yeah, I think this is definitely one of the top stories.
Yeah. So this one to watch for. Not sure. It could be like literally nothing, as a lot of these end up being. But yeah, it seems like there's not really much else going on to take away from it. So they could be worth for that. I see another one that you have on here is for Top Shot. So if we want to talk about that, they have Magic Johnson packs are coming out this week. Uh, One thing I mentioned last week was they have been uh, coming out with a lot more updates recently that have been things that people have wanted for a while. And then this one is somewhat pricey for what it is. Obviously, Magic Johnson's one of the most famous, well-known NBA players. But do you have any thoughts on this drop?
Yeah, I don't typically cover NBA Top Shot in my weekly previews. I'm kind of over it for the most part, but I think we have to at least spend a few minutes talking about this. Magic Johnson coming to NBA Top Shot, debuting, all of his kind of never before seen, or at least on NBA Top Shot, his moments here. So I think those will be big, and they did supply right on this one. So it's only 1,600 packs. Um, so that feels kind of right sized. And to me, I feel like the demand would be there. Personally, back when I was deep into Top Shot, I loved the run it back packs or the run it back moments the most. Those were always my personal favorite. So I think others share that sentiment, and I think there's going to be a lot of demand on this one. I'll be excited to see what moments they use.
Yeah, because I think as first been saying in the comments, like they added burning last week or this week, and then they also did the bid system. So there's been a lot of good stuff coming out with them. I did see on the other spectrum they had a YouTube video explaining some stuff that they uploaded the wrong video. Um, but I think right now NBA is somewhat in the forefront with it being the finals.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is an interesting one. This is tomorrow, right? Yeah, tomorrow. So one to watch for if you're in the Top Shot streets for sure. And
And
then yep.
real quick, Lou. So Ray Chung saying go Flow. Other Flow news. So Hoodlums was the first PFP project on Flow with through the Sturdy Exchange marketplace. They announced an ETH mint. So Hoodlums are coming to ETH, and it's going to be 1-to-1 for Flow Hoodlum owners. So for anyone who's on Hoodlums, take note of that if you might have missed that announcement. And that's absolutely going to be one to watch, and we'll probably cover it here in the future.
Yeah, and Flow is actually an interesting spot right now as well, with all the issues with like Solana, Avalanche, the altcoin stuff. I feel like Flow talk about Flow and Flow NFTs have really heated up recently as like sort of a way of, I don't know if you want to call it buy low, but they haven't done enough wrong for people to hate them yet, kind of thing. So I do think Flow NFTs is something that people will keep their eye on, at least here in the short term, while these other projects and L1, L2s are somewhat dying off in some of these cases. But yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at Flow and what Flow can do moving forward. So Hoodlums one, I didn't see it, but I do know that there are a decent chunk of people that have these Hoodlums NFTs as their avatars on Twitter that I've seen. So some updates there if you're a Hoodlums owner. Probably bullish on them in that sense. So yeah, I think that's from sort of the Flow side. We had there was another one, that the Moonlanders one. So when you mentioned before, and I didn't put two and two together, but this is kind of Karafuru and Three Landers combined. You had mentioned that. I was like, well, they have the names from Three Landers, and then they look a lot like the Karafuru. Um, this drop is happening this week, and what's your take on this? Because I think the artwork, is it too close to Karafuru to be successful? Because I've heard people that have been waiting for this drop.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say my immediate reaction when I found this project was, Jesus, looks just like Karafuru. So yeah, that's always a bit of a red flag to me. I don't think we've seen too many products really that look like others do too well in the space. But they've got one of the biggest followings for products dropping this week. I want to say they've got like 92,000 on Twitter. And of course, with pre-mint and everything, the following game has been gamed a little bit. But I think their whitelist is pretty heavily rigged. Minting this week. All these new drops this week are, most of them are below 10K. They're in like the 7 to 8K range, which is still fairly high. And the highest profile ones are all paid. So I want to say this is 0.08. I'm not sure if it's even on their website.
I think it is, yeah.
And I think the other piece for them is they don't have a specific roadmap, but they've got this flight plan. So I think this is actually kind of up to the potential collectors to kind of look into this and determine, what might be the future. What does this cartoon mean, for their overall vision? Which I think we'll see. You'd absolutely see more products doing this, right? As opposed to putting your roadmap and your milestones in text, like on the page, making it more of a mystery. It gives you a little bit more flexibility in how to deliver. So I definitely like that about it. I thought that was an interesting twist. There's 3 of these mints right around the same ball price. Known as the crypto tanks and moonlanders, all with like 80 to 90,000 Twitter followers this week, all happening across today, tomorrow, Wednesday. I think it'll be a good test for this market. If paid mints, right below 0.1 are able to mint out or not. It'll be a good indicator of kind of general health and where we're at.
Yeah. And I know that like Vivid last week sold out 8,888, and they had the 0.25 and then 0.3 on public, and they were still able to sell out. They have since crashed, but they're still above 0.1. So I think a 0.088 ETH price isn't too crazy to think it would sell out here and potentially get a run, just because there's not much else going on, and we might see a sort of flight towards good. Not trying to say that this one is good compared to others, but I think as we mentioned earlier, people are starting to get over these free mints that are nothing, and maybe that this has a lot more going on the website and has a bigger following. People will look towards things like these moonlanders. I saw one in the chat, the meme land. That was another one that I've seen on lists as like you want to get on this whitelist. So yeah, I think this is one to watch. Might participate, depends. I haven't really decided yet. I might be in one of my consolidation periods or just sort of watch what MFers does as already like a more established project. So is there anything else on upcoming mints this week that you wanted to touch on?
Not really. I name dropped No. This one's got 70 or 80,000 followers. It's a blockchain play to earn game. Those haven't really been performing all too well, but I think they've got a Gallop, you can some staking, tokenomics, all of that in the roadmap. So if you're into that type of project, I'd say check out the No. And then another P2E game launching this week is the Crypto Tanks. Another one that's partnered with Premint. It's got 77,000 followers on Twitter. So from the quick skim of the week, I did these three are the biggest drops that we know about with planned dates. Of course, I'm sure we'll have several stealth drops, projects that weren't on our radar at all come up. So we'll see. I personally wouldn't mind if the Freemint meta narrative changes a little bit. I'm not against free mints. I like it when it's done well and with purpose and intention, but I think we're all just kind of sick of the derivative garbage that just keeps pumping dumping out of the gate. If anything, it's just a waste of all of our time and attention.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to get past that. I'm curious how these products have vision, albeit if their roadmap is one we've seen before. At least they put some time into planning them. I'll be curious to see how they fare this week.
Yeah. And one other thing that popped up this morning, we don't have to get too deep into it, but one to watch is Gala they're doing a game launching on Epic Game Store. So like that could be one to pay attention to what's going on there, because I believe it's the first to do it. And it'll be just interesting to see because it's an NFT powered game that people have talked about and backed by a pretty large video game company. So that'll be interesting to see if others go off of it. Yeah, we for Thursday our plan is going to be doing spaces. So it's on 6/9, but we're going to do a little differently this week and do a Twitter Spaces, and we're going to have somewhat of a panel of people who are like influencers and just other names in the space. We have like, let's see, it was like Jake and Bake from Metaverse HQ. I think Trapple Farmer is going to be one. We're trying to work with CSU Ram as well to come on. We're just grabbing a few people, so look out for updates on that when we come up with it. But we're gonna do that probably around 3 Eastern, I think on Thursday. So depending on what MFers come out with, maybe we'll talk about that. But that's one other thing we're planning on doing this week. But if people are interested in stuff, don't be afraid to reach out to us. We're always available on Twitter and things like just the Discords in general as well. But we'll keep up with these updates on luckytrader.com. That's one thing we've been pushing a lot more recently. And then did we want to talk about this punk sale or this punk personal Dutch auction? Because I think it's somewhat interesting. It shows a lot of the illiquidity in punks. We had the last punks are around a 50 ETH floor, and we're looking at the zombie punk sales and calling them recent sales. There's only 7 that are listed, and they're all listed pretty high above 1,000 ETH. The 24 most recent sales, there was one a month ago for 1,000 ETH, and then since then it has been for 4 months. So it's very illiquid. This market for zombies. I saw there was an alien punk that was listed for like $25 million that he had to write a whole thread about saying why. So what's your thoughts on punks? Because there's a lot here as far as people's takes on each side, where it's like punks long-term vision, it doesn't matter what it is in the short term. And then there's other people that are thinking, oh, like you can't even sell one of these things if you wanted to right now. And it reminds me of Top Shot Cosmic Talk, where people are like, well, I'm not going to sell this thing for less than $100,000. And in this case, it seems like $1 million for this punk that they don't want to sell it below. But it's like, are there buyers for it? So explain a little of what he's been doing on this Dutch auction.
Yeah, so he has been slowly Dutch auctioning off his punk, and what that means is he's just been gradually lowering the offering price. So we see here June 3rd, he came out of the gate at 1,000 ETH, which is, based on recent sales, probably the right number. And granted, this is a stringy hair one, which is typically one of the worst punk traits. Typically, they're always on the floor, one of the lowest value traits in punks. But it has the shades, which is a better one, so that might balance it out a little bit. But basically, what he's been doing is just slowly decreasing the price. We see on the 5th, he dropped it all the way to 850 before he got a bid. He got a 300 ETH bid. And then today, 750, got a 450 ETH bid. Now it's down to 700. So he's just going to slowly keep dropping this by 50 ETH until he catches the right bid. My gut is this thing is going to end up in the 500 to 550 range. And I think there's a lot to unpack for that. One, when you get into this part of the market, right, you have to know that it's illiquid. And selling illiquid high-end assets into a bear market is never a good strategy, unless you really think punks are going lower. So
it also looks bad, does it not? Like if this sells at 500, it still looks bad selling. It would almost look better if he just didn't sell it at all versus what he's doing right now. It's almost making punks look worse, because if a zombie only sells for 10x the floor, like that seems pretty bearish, I would think, right? Like what should this be? Like 50x the floor?
I haven't
20?
dove deep into the high-end punk like multiplier models.
Mm-hmm.
So at 80 of these, it's twice the supply of the gold apes. So I'd have to think about it. But typically, the top-end punks have reigned supreme over the NFT market. Even with the BAYC floor price, passing them, 2xing them. Certainly, a lot of the fellow zombie owners, a lot of punk owners were saying, like, what is this guy doing? It's terrible. Like, he's undercutting the market. They're worth way more than this. Well, they're not. No one's buying it.
There's no buyer.
That's the problem, right? And I realize it takes time for people to move this amount of ETH. I wouldn't be surprised if the end scenario here is a fellow zombie holder or punk whale to just buy this to help save face a little bit. But yeah, this one's going low, and then not great timing with Perugia, who has arguably the most famous alien punk. He listed his for 14,200 ETH, which was right around 25 million. I wasn't a fan of his thread. I
didn't like it.
He basically says that he feels like he's like doing a favor for the market by putting out.
Oh yeah,
one of the more.
This is going to sell, so it's helping everybody. What, like you're just listing it for what, an egregious amount versus what was the top sale in USD terms?
Yeah, let's go back.
Because I think it's not like he's putting it at any sort of discount is the thing. Like he's putting it basically 2x the ETH value of the top sale and only 1 million higher. He bought it for 7.5 million a year ago.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, and so that was an interesting one because the same day there was an exact same sale. I remember that one happening, and that was pretty crazy. That sale itself did create a big bull run.
It
Uh,
did. And Prugio, he's notorious in this channel. He actually also forecasted that August bull run. I don't know if he had insider info or not, but he famously tweeted hide your punks the day
mhm.
before that like 100 punk sweep, which kind of set off the entire NFT summer. But if we look at these sales, the 8,000 ETH sale for Alien 5822 was to Deepak, which he famously did on leverage. I discount every trade that Deepak has made. He's overpaid consistently for his assets. He's been fire selling a lot of his assets. So I don't even know that you can really put too much weight behind that. Is Punk 7804 going to go for anywhere near 14,000 ETH? Absolutely not. Not in this market. I'd be surprised if he could even get 8,000 ETH again, to be quite blunt. So I think it's going to be crickets up there on the top end. But, we'll see. I always think it's bearish when these guys list their punks when he only bought this
And then he has to go
15
write a
months
thread
ago.
about why as
And I
well.
understand getting out in front of it because people are going to ask that very question. He said, "Hey, I've been buying other punks," but I don't know. His explanation here wasn't too great. He's very open to letting someone else take the reins as purchaser of the largest ever on-chain NFT sale. Yeah, I'd be happy to sell my most expensive purchase for 3.5x as well to let someone else have that opportunity.
But doesn't someone else have that already with the Deepak one? Or is he
Uh,
saying that doesn't count because of the leverage stuff?
or this person now would have
Yeah.
that next opportunity.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't love his explanation. It's interesting times in the punks market for sure. I think a lot of people are still very bullish on punks long term. In the short term, it's always hard to say how they're
Mm-hmm.
going to trade. The whole Yuga Labs acquisition is still a huge question mark on what they're going to do with them if anything. Um, but
Yeah.
these are two auctions definitely to follow if you're even fairly interested in the punks market.
Yeah. I mean, imagine spending $25 million on a punk right now. Imagine spending that on anything right now. It's kind of like across all of markets. Like it's not really a ton to be bullish on macro wise on things. Like if you had 14,000 Ethereum, would you want to put it into a punk or just cash it into USD? Like there's plenty of reason why someone would just want to do that
Or
instead,
convert
right?
to Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like if you have 14,000 ETH, you just want to buy Bitcoin with it. So it's gonna be interesting to see if anything happens with these. Yeah,
I wonder if
I'm
this was real. It feels like it probably wasn't because it's crossed out.
bid withdrawn.
Yeah.
Could have been like a flash bid or something. I'm not sure. I feel like looking at a lot of these that like that one, like, oh, you can buy this for 125,000 ETH. And I feel like a lot of the stuff on the punks activity is I don't even want to call it fake, but like it's a lot of bots. And it's kind of hard to read some of it in a way as well. But look at that. Remember when that guy bought it for 12 ETH?
He turned
It's
around
just kind of
12 and
crazy.
got 4,200. So that was a good trade.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a good point too. Like, how many people are in the market to buy anything for 14,000 ETH?
It's probably a
If
dozen people or less.
right, so why don't you just DM them and be like, "Hey, you want this?" So, yeah, the people that currently hold aliens are like the people who would do it. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch. I think it's I don't know. I read it as bearish how it's being played out on both of these. The fact that he's listing it and has to like explain why he's listing it um, for an amount that is like the highest price any would ever sell is kind of a lot too. But I don't know. I think that's just kind of what Twitter and NFTs are kind of in that spot right now where people need to explain why their bags are better than someone else's bags. And I think people are pretty down on punks in the short term anyway. So like would you buy a top end at a higher price? I think the zombie, someone might come in and say, "Oh, 500 ETH is a deal for the zombies right now because I'll be able
Mhm.
to sell it for 1,000 ETH later once the market heats up." Um, I do think that one, someone will come in and buy it because it is at a discount. Whether or not people believe in it long term, someone out there is going to see a number. Like there is already an offer at 450
Right.
ETH. So there will be a buyer if he continues to lower that price. But I mean, to show that the last sales, like that'll be the cheapest sale since what, 10 months ago. So not great for people that hold bunks, even if that sells at any point in time from here forward going downward. I don't think is a good sign either. So we'll see. We figured we'd talk about that as something else that's playing out in the markets right now, um, more so in like the macro sense. So cool. Anything else that you had your eyes on in that side of things to watch for?
No, I think we've covered it all, though.
Cool. Cool. Well, as mentioned before, we'll be doing a spaces on Thursday, so hop on with that. We'll put out basically create the event beforehand on Twitter so people can see exact time and who some of the people are we're bringing on. But besides that, good luck this week. There's not necessarily a ton of new stuff coming out outside of the random things that people see pop up on Moby, but um, without further ado, we'll leave you guys and talk to you guys on Thursday.